Lord be with you.
And with your spirit.
A reading from the Holy Gospel according to John.
Glory to you, O Lord.
When Judas had left them, Jesus said, "Now is the Son of Man glorified, and God is glorified in him. If God is glorified in him, God will also glorify him in himself, and God will glorify him at once. My children, I will be with you only a little while longer. I give you a new commandment: love one another. As I have loved you, so you also should love one another. This is how all will know that you are my disciples, if you love one another." The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
We think of the geography of heaven, we typically think of something in the sky. Heaven is up there. We're down here. Heaven is up there. So we look up and we talk about people who have died. We say, well, they're now in heaven. Well, we hope they are. But we also think of heaven as a distant place. It's removed from the present. It's in the future for all of us. But when you think of today's reading from the book of Revelation, it forces us to rethink of that geography. We need a new geography lesson this morning. Because when John, the great evangelist, writes this, it's in chapter 21 of Revelation, the last book of the New Testament. He has this beautiful vision. It's not only a dream. John really sees this in his heart, in his mind. He says, "Then I, John, saw a new heaven and a new earth. The former heaven and the former earth had passed away, and the sea was no more." He has this vision. There's a new heaven, a new earth. It's tremendous. And think of what Jesus says when he encounters Martha and Mary right after they've lost their brother Lazarus. Took him a few days to get there, 4 days, and when finally arrives, Martha says, "If you had been here, my brother would not have died." And then Jesus says to her, "I'm the resurrection and the life." It doesn't say the resurrection and life is over there or in the future. It says, "I'm the resurrection and the life." In the Gospel of John, John tells us that to know Jesus, to know the only Son of God, is to taste eternal life. So today's Gospel and today's readings bring us face to face with how can we taste eternal life now? How can we see heaven and earth as a beautiful picture coming among us as the bride and the groom coming together? Beautiful imagery. So, let's look at that. Jesus says eternal life is this: to know who I am. That's eternal life. So we begin to taste eternal life. How do we do it? Well, let me give you examples. So we live in a world that's very competitive, very full of people who want power and prestige and fame. And there's a lot of anguish in the world, a lot of anger, a lot of jealousy, a lot of pride. There's a lot of greed in the world. We see that with Wall Street. We see it with people even in our midst. That's the old order. That's the old order. What's the new order? Well, St. Paul in his letter to the Galatians says that the new order is made up of what? Peace and joy and love and gentleness. And see, every time we gather together, every time we make a decision to live in the glory that St. John talks about in today's gospel, in the glory of God, we're living in that new order. It's very different. And it comes down to what Jesus says in today's gospel. Love one another. Now we hear that so often, they can almost become trite. We hear it so often. What does it mean to love one another? Well, to love one another means to live and to taste a little bit of heaven. Think of it when you love somebody, when you're willing to be reconciled with somebody, when you're willing to forgive somebody, when you're willing to put your trust in somebody, you begin to taste a new order. Something new is happening in your life. So John today says, I've got a new picture for you. I saw a new heaven and a new earth. Don't just think of that as something for the future. It's something that you and I can experience now. And today, Emma and Addison are going to experience that in a special way. Because you're going to be making your first communion. You're going to be tasting God today. You're going to be tasting a little bit of heaven. So you don't have to wait 30 or 40 years or 80 years. You can start tasting God now and knowing the beauty of his resurrection. Isn't that great? And that's true for each one of us here. We can take that for granted. When you and I come to communion, we taste a little bit of heaven. When his son was struggling with his faith, Tolkien wrote this: out of the darkness of my life, so much frustrated, I put before you the one great thing to love on earth, the Blessed Sacrament. There you will find, listen to this, is there you will find romance, there you will find glory, honor, fidelity, future way of all your loves on earth. A future way of all your loves on earth. Let's taste a new heaven and a new earth today. Let's not be afraid to be kissed by God, because that's what happens every time you receive Holy Communion. Every time we're willing to forgive, every time we're willing to love, every time we're willing to put on Christ and become a new creation for others, we help paint that image of a new heaven and a new earth.